Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setbacks become the stepping stones to growth and clarity. Today's guest is Andy Neillie, a leadership expert and business owner dedicated to turning managers into high-performing leaders. His career was sparked by toxic experience with a quote unquote clueless and lazy boss over 20 years ago, proving that bad examples can sometimes be our greatest teachers. He is
Yeah,
here
yeah,
to discuss how that professional adversity became the fuel for his mission to build and trust and excellence in leadership. So, Andy, it's a pleasure to welcome you to FieldCraft. Thanks for joining us today.
you bet, Ezekiel. I'm happy to be on with you. I love the topic that you're diving into, and have appreciated some of the great insights that you and some of your other podcast guests have had that I've had a chance to listen into. Excited to be part of that conversation.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's dive in, Andy. Your origin story is built on a profound negative experience. You refer to a specific abusive manager you had 20 years ago. So can you take
Yeah,
us back to that specific
sure.
environment? So what did it feel like to work on that kind of leadership failure day in, day out?
Yeah. It's interesting because while it was more than 20 years ago now, it still ignites my fire. I had become a follower of Jesus Christ when I was a very young child. I don't come from a church family, but I grew up a person of faith, and
Mm.
I'm reading about this wonderful servant leader in the Gospels. And then one of the first jobs I had as I was working my way through university, Ezekiel, I was working in the construction field, and this boss that you alluded to that I've written a little bit about, he had an anger management issue. And we were on construction job sites with power equipment. And if he had a power tool in his hand when he lost it because of his anger and his immaturity, man, you better watch out.
Wow.
And so I'm reading about this servant leader, and then I'm working for a boss who can't control his own temper. And I just realized that's not the way it's supposed to be. And that really did, as you alluded to a minute ago, it kind of ignited in me what's a good leader supposed to look like, because that's not it. This guy that I'm afraid to go to work every day wondering is he going to have a bad day and take it out on his crew.
All right. Andy, thanks for quickly going through that backstory.
Long time ago, but I still remember.
Yeah, you sounded like it's still very clear in your head. So, Andy, I'd like to know what was a specific moment that lit a fire in you to
Yeah.
change the way leadership is done?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you and I are both trying to change the way leadership is done. Leadership will always be a journey. It's a
Mm.
comma and never a period in the English language, because we're always getting it together. But I remember a day on the job site. We moved from job site to job site. We had one of those big pickup trucks with our equipment in the back, and I was in the passenger seat. He was in the driver's seat. He grabbed the stapler from the packet of information we had and proceeded to hit me with that stapler several times while I'm trapped in this truck. And I just remember thinking, man, this if I ever get the opportunity to be a manager or a boss, I want to do it differently. And I think a lot of us get awakened. Here in the States, we call it the anti-mentor syndrome. Sometimes
Mm.
you learn more from the bad boss or the bad mentor than you learn from the good mentor. And my boss, while I was going to university, was one of those anti-mentors.
All right, anti-mentors. I'm gonna be real with you. This is the first time I'm hearing that particular word. So I like to know how did you keep your own morale or performance up when you were subject to that
Yeah.
insulting sarcasm and lack of direction?
I mean, I think it's hard for all of us, right? Because we're wanting to do a good job. We want to support the team, and then we see behavior that we know is not the right behavior. And so you've got to have good moral fortitude. I think you just got to believe in yourself and believe things are going to be different, and take the opportunities to go other places where you're looking for better managers who are producing high performing teams because people want to work hard for them. But I think we all wander around a little bit, Ezekiel, as
Mm.
we seek that out. The second bad story that I remember was not too many years after that. I was working for a consulting firm, and one of the senior leaders in the consulting firm, he didn't have an anger management issue. It wasn't anything physically violent like that, but he took all the credit for himself. He had a team of us working underneath him, and we would just kill ourselves on projects, and then he would go and present, and it was all about him. And it wasn't this violent disappointment, but over a while, he just killed the morale of the team because it was like no matter what we did, he got the accolades. And again, that just further convinced me, man, there's a better way to lead. The best managers are servant leaders. This concept that you and I are both aware of, right? They're at the bottom of the pyramid, not at the top of the pyramid. And so that's been more than 20 years now that I've been using my communication, writing and reading and keynoting and things to promote there is a better way to build leadership.
Hey, fantastic. So, Andy, I'd like to ask, have you ever found yourself slipping into any of those bad habits,
Yeah.
when the pressure is on, and how do you course correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in fact, I appreciate you asking me that honest question. When we started this podcast, you promoted me as an expert in leadership, Ezekiel. The most I am is a student of good leaders. I fail regularly. In fact, I think I call it the 4 leadership compromisers. There's 4 areas that leaders can fail their people. One is conviction. It's not having your eyes up. And man, I get guilty times, Ezekiel, of what, I'm caught in the weeds. I'm not seeing the longer term, bigger picture to inspire my people. That first leadership compromise of not having enough conviction, and then not helping my team get competent and enabling them to execute. One of my weaknesses is I love to delegate because I want to empower other people. But
Mm.
Ezekiel, at times, my delegation is simply Andy didn't want to be responsible enough. And I didn't really make sure other people were doing what they needed to do. I just kind of gave it to him and hoped it worked out. So there's a couple of areas that I know I could grow as a leader. And, I've been doing this for more than 25 years now. I'm still very aware I'm not the leader I want to be. On the way, better than I was, but not the leader I want to be yet.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for the sheer honesty. Really, really great response from you, Andy. So you wrote the golden principles
I did.
based on
Yeah.
lessons from a rescued dog. So how did,
Yeah.
just walk us through that process? How did
Yeah.
the simplicity of dog's perspective help you
Yeah.
heal or move on from the toxicity of the corporate world?
Yeah. Well, we rescued our first dog shortly after we got married and had our first place to live. And I am studying for my dissertation on leadership, and I'm writing and speaking about it. And then I'm coming home from a road trip, Ezekiel, and dropping my suitcase and my briefcase late at night in the hallway by our front door, calling out, "I'm home," expecting everybody to come running to me. And one of these rescued dogs would go running the other direction. He was scared of me because I was leading with a loud voice and with power. And that's what I thought I should be doing in order to meet Redford, the dog on the cover of this book you alluded to. I had to get down to his level. He was his first year of life was a horrible life, and so we rescued him, and I had to get down to his level for him to learn to trust. And I just realized that's probably a principle for all of us along the way: is meeting our people where they're at instead of expecting them to meet us where we're at. And learning with Redford that a tender yes is typically going to get better behavior than a harsh no. And all of a sudden I realized, man, a lot of these lessons that I'm having to learn because of this dog we've rescued and all of the subsequent dogs. My wife and I now have dog number 15 at home. We've rescued dogs,
Wow,
many
wow.
dogs over the years. So as one passes, we rescue another one. And I just realized, despite my dissertation, despite my 25,000 pages of reading, despite 5 million frequent flyer miles from traveling all over the world, I think I've learned more about leading well from these animals that need you to meet them where they're at. So that's how the book came about, and I've been blessed to have it become a little bit of a bestseller. And I don't mind being known as the guy that wrote the book about dogs and leadership. That's a nice compliment to me.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, Andy, you talk about the difference between a manager and a leader. So, what is the
Yeah,
biggest quote unquote failure a manager makes when they try to transition to leadership
yeah.
but can't quite make the leap?
Yeah. I think probably the biggest struggle I see is managers that think it's about them. And once you realize what it means to be a good leader, you realize it's not about me. It's about my people. In fact, if you're going to be the type of leader that deserves followers, it's kind of a thankless job, Ezekiel, because the other people get the credit. The other people get the awareness. The other people are recognized because you've done your job well. And I've worked a lot with sales organizations, particularly Ezekiel, and leaders in sales organizations, top performing salespeople. They win because they like to win, and then they get promoted into a management position. And part of what they've got to recognize is it's not about me winning anymore. It's about me making my team win. So I think that would be one of the big lessons. Managers have to learn it's not about me.
Fantastic. So, Andy, for the person listening right now who is currently working for a not so great boss right now,
Been there, done that. Yeah.
and they feel stuck, powerless, or abused. So, what's the first piece of advice you would give to them to protect their own potential?
Yeah. Well, probably a couple of things, Ezekiel. One is they need to recognize they're not alone, right?
Mm,
Toxic work environments, unfortunately, exist everywhere, right? Secondly, if their manager isn't going to grow, they've got to be looking for other opportunities. And here in the States right now, it's kind of an employee rich environment. People can find new jobs if they need to. So you just have to have your eyes open. No, it's not, you're not alone. Have your eyes open. And then you've got to invest in yourself after hours, right? You've got to be reading. You've got to be exercising. You've got to be putting back into the well the energy that's being sucked out by that bad manager. And Ezekiel, I hurt for them, right? There's just a bunch of bad bosses out there. And people aren't supposed to be treated that way. Remember, it takes me all the way back to I'm reading in the Gospels about this leader who is serving his people. That's how we're supposed to be as leaders.
okay, Andy. So, I have a personal question for you. After
Sure.
navigating, bad bosses, building your own business, and teaching thousands of leaders, so what does being successful truly mean to you now?
That's a $1 million question. If you and I could write the book on that, we could both retire. To be real honest, being successful for me is getting the opportunity to talk with people like you about what I'm passionate about. I think God put me on this planet to help people who are in positions of influence to use their influence well, Ezekiel. That's what I think I'm supposed to do. And then at the end of the day, also go home and love my wife and love our dogs and have a pretty simple life.
Amazing. A really, really, really amazing meaning to being successful. So, Andy, for our listeners who want to bring you in to perhaps train their team or learn more about
Yeah,
your
yeah.
frameworks and your style, how you do things.
Approach.
So, where is the best place for them to go?
You can go to my website, Neillie Leadership, and Ezekiel, thank you. You've printed my last name correctly on this podcast, so people can find it. Neillie, NeillieLeadership.com. In fact, I've even got a tag up at the top of my website if somebody wants to jump on a 15-minute phone call to just pick each other's brains a little bit. I'd be happy to do that. And yeah, as you and I've talked, I got to travel to your great continent a couple of times earlier this year and do some leadership development in Ghana and spend some time in Kenya. Obviously, I'm in the States, so most of my work is here in the States, but would love to be able to talk with any of your folks about some of these management challenges and how do we make ourselves leaders, not just managers.
Great. So, Andy, this has been an incredibly valuable conversation, and I'm indeed honored to have you on the podcast today.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.